This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Blood Red channel as we bring you this season's Champions League group stage draw live here on the Blood Red channel. I'm Guy Clarke, alongside me Dan Kay, Dan Morgan and Matt Addison as we get ready to bring you this live watch along. Dan Kay, I come to you first. Dan, how are we doing? Excited?
Excited, yeah, but it is obviously a little bit bittersweet because this generally is one of the most exciting days of the year for Liverpool supporters, particularly those of us that like to, that go to games and go to away games. And ordinarily, we'd be watching this, obviously looking at it from a football point of view, but also with EasyJet and Ryanair windows open, plotting adventures and trips around Europe. And obviously, sadly, that isn't going to be the case, certainly for the group stages. Who knows what's going to happen in the new year? But it's the start of a new season. Liverpool have had some fantastic experiences in the Champions League over recent years. And I think we're all hoping that the Reds will be looking to get that trophy back after the disappointment against Atletico Madrid 6 months ago. Yeah,
the idea, of course, we're going to be watching the draw as it does take place, bring you our live and latest reaction, of course, from the Echo Sports Desk, as well as Liverpool.com. Veteran of one of these Champions League watch-alongs is Dan Morgan. Dan, you were on the broadcast last year. We've got a new swanky studio for this one, and it's all exciting.
I mean, even more exciting, there's no Carlo Ancelotti's Napoli. I mean, not so much so for the viewers, because you would just see my heart sink for what feels like the 10th time in 10 years, even though Liverpool have been out of the competition. But yeah, Ancelotti's Napoli last season was a bit of a kick in the teeth to me, particularly because they were so hard to play against. I think there's no surprises for Liverpool here with this draw. Even pot 2. We know Atletico was dancers. We know Barcelona. Jurgen Klopp knows Borussia Dortmund inside out. And then anything beyond that, Ajax, Shakhtar, maybe. I can't see, anything that would scare Liverpool immensely. If I'm honest, the whole Atletico sort of context that I could do without, especially now with Suarez, it just feels unnecessary. So if we could avoid them, I'd be happy. But yeah, I'm just nice and relaxed watching this one, Guy.
Yeah, I bet you are. We're going to get into all the pots, quickly take a look through those, because as we know with the Champions League draw, it does take a long time. But finally with us as well is Matt Addison. Matt, how are we?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, mate. Looking forward to this. Obviously, as both Dans have said there, it's not a massive issue, really, who Liverpool draw. I think Liverpool are going to be very confident whoever they come up against. And it's going to be interesting to sort of see, which order of matches and stuff like that comes out. I think that's obviously important for Liverpool. But yeah, whether it's Barcelona, whether it's Atletico Madrid, I'm sure there'll be plenty of narratives for us to dive into. And obviously, for us, that's great, because it means loads more content to come over the next few weeks. So yeah, whoever Liverpool get, I think we'll all be pretty happy. And yeah, it's one of those, isn't it, really? It's always an exciting time of year. It's always something that you always look forward to seeing who Liverpool get. Certainly, when they've been in the competition in recent years, it's been a really exciting time. And I think there's a few teams in there that maybe aren't the biggest names, but you wouldn't mind Liverpool getting. Someone like Red Bull Salzburg last year, a couple of really amazing games in the group stage. So yeah, whoever Liverpool get, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, do get involved in the live chat function on our Blood Red YouTube channel, and we will do as best as we can to bring some of those up on screen and also discuss some of your reactions as they do come into us. But the way the group draw obviously works is 32 teams divided between 4 pots, each having 8 teams in. Liverpool in pot 1. And let's take a look then sort of at the pots and who Liverpool can sort of draw and what company Liverpool are in. So best start with pot 1, which of course has last season's Champions League winners Bayern Munich, the Europa League winners Sevilla, as well as Real Madrid, Liverpool, Juventus, PSG, Porto and Zenit St. Petersburg. So they're the top seeds in the group phase. Go into pot 2 and we'll get into a bit of a chat here on things, guys. Pot 2 is quite interesting. Liverpool can't draw Manchester City, Manchester United or Chelsea because they are fellow English sides, but any of the other 5 sides they can draw. Dan Morgan, come to you on this. We've got Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Shakhtar Donetsk, Borussia Dortmund or Ajax. Some illustrious names in and amongst that.
Yeah, it's a strong pot 2, really is. I think sort of as this competition's developed over the years, there's sort of been a bridging of the gap between pot 1 and pot 2. Obviously, you've got your massive hitters, but Liverpool. I remember sort of the first year Liverpool get back in under Jurgen Klopp, and it's it's Liverpool and Paris Saint-Germain, for example, and that in a group in itself is massive, and Napoli were in there again as well also. So yeah, Liverpool haven't really. I'd probably say with domestic cup draws as well, Guy, under Jurgen Klopp, haven't really had the greatest of luck, if you like. They could certainly do with one with the schedule and how it's looking this season and how compact it is. But they know they have a tough opponent, pot 2, and I would imagine it would be between, obviously, with every group, who is pot 1 and pot 2 in terms of who qualifies. So. Yeah, I think, like I said before, no real surprises there for Liverpool. They've played both Spaniards twice. Shakhtar will prove a challenge, but I'm sure Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp can prepare for that adequately, and they can do with Borussia Dortmund also.
Yeah, Dan K on pot 2 and looking at it, and on Dan Morgan's point there of sort of Liverpool and seeding within the Champions League. Of course, it was only really last year that Liverpool have sort of migrated into pot 1 and had therefore an easier draw in inverted commas. So looking at those sides, is there anyone in particular that you're wanting to see Liverpool sort of avoid? Because it's not all been too often that Liverpool sort of had the pick of the teams that they've sort of got to face in these competitions.
No, that's true. I mean, I have to say, I think Liverpool will be one of the top teams in Europe that virtually every other team in the whole draw will be wanting to avoid, because Liverpool's record over recent years is pretty much second to none. Like Dan said before, the whole Atletico Madrid they're almost kind of like Liverpool's kryptonite to some degree. They certainly were last season. Dan made the excellent point. Obviously, there'd be difficult side anyway, with the confidence that they took from last year's result knocking it out, and obviously now bolstered by Luis Suarez and the whole circus that would surround that. I actually did a piece on the Echo site this morning. We ran a couple of polls in the live blog yesterday. Who would fans most like to see Liverpool draw, and who would fans least like to see Liverpool draw? And by a country mile, Atletico Madrid were the team that Liverpool fans least wanted the Reds to draw. Ironically, we did the same thing last year, and Atletico topped it then, I think, at about 30%. This year, it was over. I think it was about 64-65% of Liverpool fans. They were the one team that they didn't want the Reds to come up against, and I can understand that. I did put a little line in the piece myself saying, can fully understand fans thinking that. It wouldn't surprise me if possibly the players maybe thought slightly different, knowing how determined and how proud this Liverpool side are of their record, of how they go about their business. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if there's a part of their minds that maybe secretly would actually relish a rematch with Atletico to kind of put the record straight after what happened last year. At the end of the day, you get who you get. I always kind of have a wry smile to myself when people say, I want us to draw these, or I want this to happen and want that to happen. At the end of the day, it's immaterial. What we want, what will happen, will happen. One thing I do have to say, I think it's absolutely nailed on Liverpool will get Ajax, because for years, Liverpool, I think I'm right in saying Liverpool and Ajax, two of the most decorated clubs in European club history, I think have still only ever met once, the famous 1966-67 European Cup tie when famously Liverpool got battered in the fog 5-1 in December in the first leg. Shankly convinced everyone that we could pull it round, and Anfield was absolutely mobbed out for the second leg when a 17-year-old Johan Cruyff-inspired Ajax scored twice, and they drew 2-2 and went through them. But particularly in the modern era, obviously when travel's so much easier and it's much easier for fans to get to games, every year I've heard fans saying, "Come on, it's got to be Ajax, because everyone wants a jolly to Amsterdam." And it would just be absolute sod's law that the one year that we can't go, we get them. So if you're a betting man, Liverpool and Ajax nailed on, I reckon.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. As you say, a long time since Liverpool last met Ajax, and nearly met, of course, in the Champions League final in Madrid in 2019, but wasn't to happen. Matt, looking at pot 2, then let you have your say on it. I suppose one team that Jurgen Klopp probably would be keen to avoid would probably be Shakhtar Donetsk, due to the long trip and the truncated season we've got this year. Probably not ideal for the Reds.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Obviously, the sort of travelling distance, especially in a season like this one where it's only going to be 2 or 3 days between matches, whether that's Champions League, Premier League, whatever. So yeah, I can see the sort of reason for wanting to avoid them. But I think they're possibly of those teams that Liverpool can draw, probably certainly on a football sense, probably the least high level of those teams. I think Borussia Dortmund certainly if they can keep hold of Jadon Sancho, which as it stands now, it seems like that might be a realistic possibility. They would be a very difficult task. Obviously, Ajax, we saw them in the semi-finals. I know it's a slightly different team. They've lost a few key players since then. And obviously, Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, we all know everything that there is to know about those two and the qualities that they've got. So whoever Liverpool get, I think they'll go into those matches, confident, obviously, that they can win. But I think certainly Shakhtar probably look the weakest team, but it's obviously weighing up that, as you say, with the travelling distance. Maybe this year a Dortmund or an Ajax might be slightly preferable to them on that basis. But yeah, as I say, whoever Liverpool get, I think probably they're going to be confident of, whether it's at home, whether it's away, whether there's fans there or probably not, as is the case. I think Liverpool can be fairly confident whoever they get. And I suppose that's just a reiteration really of the standing that Liverpool have at the moment, which is I suppose quite a nice luxury for Liverpool fans to have going into this, that you're not really panicking or scared about any of those teams. Whichever team in pot 2 they get, I think they can get through.
Yeah, certainly. Let's have a look at pot 3. The draw isn't underway yet. We just on the stream of the draw that's taking place. The UEFA president Alexander Seferin has just been talking, and the president's award is ongoing at the moment. So pot 3 then: Dynamo Kiev, Salzburg, Leipzig, Inter Milan, Olympiacos, Lazio, Krasnodar, and Atalanta. So as it stands, Liverpool could draw any one of those 3 sides. Dan Morgan, come to you first with this one again. And what are we thinking of sort of the makeup of pot 3? Of course, Olympiacos, one of the sides that Liverpool played on the road to Istanbul in 2004-05, and given what happened at the end of last season, this year's final is going to be taking place in Istanbul once again.
Yeah, also on the road to the treble in 2001 in the UEFA Cup, which shouldn't be forgotten. Knockout stage then, I think, back then. Yeah, another tough group, Guy, to be honest. Krasnodar, the obvious outliers there, but we all know what Atalanta did last season. Inter Milan have seemed to be building blocks in terms of sort of gaining some kind of European reputation back. You've got the 2 Red Bull clubs who Liverpool know are formidable opponents. Salzburg last year was a real tough test. And then there's Dynamo Kiev. So, yeah, I mean, it's not an easy pot. But Jurgen Klopp, if he sat here on this stream, he'd be telling us that nothing's easy right now. And, Liverpool will have to... I'm just sort of more intrigued into sort of what the plan will be prior to the draw being made in terms of Klopp's mindset with this, whether he sort of has a Champions League team in mind per se, or more whether he'll just rotate it on a basis of what a sports science team are telling him. And I'm, I think regardless of who comes out the hat, pot 2, pot 3, pot 4, I think there might be a case that Klopp has already sort of got his mind made up with certain dates and fixtures and certain players in mind.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. Matt, looking at that group then, Dan said before the Red Bull clubs, I know you did a podcast especially for the Blood Red channel looking sort of at the makeup of the Red Bull clubs and Liverpool and that link. It does sort of sometimes feel as though it's fate that Liverpool will draw one of those sides.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It'd be very interesting if they got Leipzig, someone like that, or Salzburg. Either way, it's 2 very difficult teams to play against, very high intensity. We've seen plenty of times Liverpool have sort of played in that Red Bull group. Obviously, Salzburg in a friendly not so long ago and that sort of thing. So, obviously, Liverpool know them inside out. They are, as we said in that special podcast, a couple of months now, wasn't it, ago, they play in a very similar sort of style to Liverpool. So, potentially, if Liverpool play in those sorts of games, you think it might suit them. They would obviously... do all the necessary research and sort of scouting beforehand anyway. But I suppose those 2 teams sort of come with a little bit of that done already, a little bit of that preparation. Liverpool have shown plenty of times now that they can play against those sorts of teams and do that sort of thing. Obviously, looking elsewhere in the group, you look at someone like Krasnodar, it's obviously much more difficult to sort of get an understanding of the way that they play and that sort of thing. But yeah, as Dan said before, there's loads of difficult teams in that group. I think one of my preferences would be Salzburg in that. Obviously similar in style to Liverpool, as I say, very similar to Leipzig as well. But Salzburg, I think, would be a decent draw, not too far to travel. Some nice couple of matches there, I think, should be good for the neutral as well. And And again, you'd fancy Liverpool to be able to sort of navigate their way through a group with those sorts of teams in it. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they get in every group. But certainly, as you say, the Red Bull groups are of special interest, I think, to Liverpool.
Yeah, and Dan K, it sort of seems a real contrast, that group, in terms of, I suppose, the historical nature of the sides within it. You've got the likes of Inter Milan, of course, who Liverpool have very way back, the first European Cup journey for Liverpool involved Inter Milan, and famously did so too. Olympiacos already referenced the road to Istanbul, and as Dan Morgan was saying, the UEFA Cup run at the turn of the millennium. But then you've got some young upstarts, I suppose, as it were, in Salzburg and Leipzig, and also Krasnodar.
Yeah, it's a real mixture, that group, isn't it? I was lucky enough to go to, you mentioned the 65 game against Inter, which my dad was lucky enough to go to the first leg 4 days after Liverpool won the FA Cup for the first time.
Oh, you're going to say you went then, Don?
I'm not that old. But my our fellow was a blue, but he was part of that era that kind of went to Goodison one week until the next. He was lucky enough to get a ticket. And I grew up on those stories about Jerry Byrne and Gordon Milne walking out with the cup beforehand, and obviously how Liverpool were cheated really in the second leg. But Mendebil, I think the referee was, who never really refed at the top level again. And I was looking, the sides were drawn again in the 2008 last 16, I think. And I remember as soon as the draw came out, there was no way I wasn't going to that. And the beauty about the last 16 draws, it was always made on like a Friday in December, and it was, I think 3 years in a row, it was the same Friday as the office Christmas night out. And I think 3 years in the bounce, we got Barcelona, Inter Milan and Real Madrid. And I remember all three of those nights out, we managed to get the trip booked before we went out, and just one of those things that kind of put you in a great kind of mood for Europe. And obviously, to go there, I think we were in the first leg 2-0 with 2 late goals at Anfield after Materazzi had been sent off quite early on. And Fernando Torres scored a great goal in the San Siro, just as the kind of Torres bounce song was taken off, and there was a real kind of sense of kind of like righting a historical wrong. I kind of felt then. I've not been to that many European aways, but that one is really right up there as one of the most memorable ones. I think Atalanta is quite an interesting one. They were really one of the great stories of European football last year. Did so well in the Champions League. A very small team, and obviously, as the season progressed, as we know, tragically, Bergamo was one of the real epicenters of the pandemic in Italy, with horrendous losses there, and they made it through to the knockout stages. And I think I'm right; they lost to Paris, didn't they, in the quarter final, having been 1-0 up with a minute to go, and then Paris scored 2 late goals, and it would have been a bit of a fairy story really if they managed to go all the way, or at least have a bit of a run there. So I think there'll be a few eyes on them. Dynamo Kiev, I suppose, is the other one worth mentioning as well. Liverpool have had a couple of encounters with them. Most recently, I think, when just after Gerard Houllier took ill in 2001, when he had his heart problem against Leeds, and I think literally 3 days later, Liverpool travelled over there, and I'm pretty sure became the first English team to win in Kiev. Gerrard and Murphy scored, and obviously 2 years ago, Liverpool played the final there. So it wouldn't be the ideal draw, obviously, because in terms of travel, it is a bit of a long way, and particularly because of the compressed nature of this year's group stages, where it's essentially three blocks of 3 midweek matches either side of an international break, with Premier League games either side. Klopp will be hoping that the order of the matches is kind in terms of where it falls with the league matches in between, either side of that. But as I said before, he and Liverpool don't really have any control over that. So it's just a case of seeing where the matches fall and then trying to make the best fist of it that we can.
Yeah, just to let you know, the group draw hasn't actually properly officially started yet. We've had Florent Malouda and Didier Drogba talking with Alexander Seferin and the hosts for the Champions League draw. As it does happen, of course, we will have live reaction to it. We're talking through what could well play out for Liverpool. We've looked through pots 2 and 3. Best look at pot 4 then. These effectively, I suppose, the minnows of the group stage. And all being said with that, there are still a couple of sides within pot 4 who could cause problems. Lokomotiv Moscow, you've got Marseille, Club Brugge, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Istanbul, Başakşehir, Midtjylland, Rennes and Ferencváros. So those are the 4 sides. Come to you first, Matt Addison, for your say on these. And I suppose it really is a a cluster of teams that Liverpool will sort of have varying degrees of knowledge on, because some of these sides Liverpool probably won't know all too much about, but a club like Marseille, for example, who came second in France last season, might well prove a stern test.
Yeah, very much so. Marseille, I think, are probably one of those that stand out. Borussia Mönchengladbach as well from this group is probably one that you would probably want to avoid. Andre Villas-Boas, Dimitri Payet and Florian Thauvin at Marseille. And then obviously Mönchengladbach, an established Bundesliga team, very, very well coached and know how they play and can cause obvious problems to various teams. So I suppose those two are the sort of two biggest ones that you'd want to potentially avoid from that group. But it's a real mixed bag of teams, isn't it? Some teams, Ferencváros, I think is how you pronounce it, from Hungary at the bottom there, very much a minnow. I'm not sure if they've qualified before, but they did knock Celtic out in the second qualifying round to get to this point. So obviously have got some sort of pedigree. And the Istanbul club, I think, is one that Liverpool fans will probably have an eye on. Obviously, Istanbul, obvious reasons, but Demba Ba and Martin Skrtel both play for that team, apparently. So certainly a couple of interesting little bits there. It would be interesting to see Liverpool now come up against Martin Skrtel. Certainly, you'd expect them to be able to get a couple of goals past that team. But again, it's such a strange sort of one to pick out which ones you would prefer or not prefer, because I must admit there's at least 3 or 4 teams in that group that I've never seen play, probably won't ever see play unless Liverpool draw them either. So yeah, Marseille or Mönchengladbach would be interesting. They'd be very good games, but I think personally I'd like to try and avoid those if possible.
Yeah, some interesting clubs as well in there, Dan, who have sort of made their way into the Champions League for the first time in Midtjylland and Başakşehir. And Midtjylland aside, those who like Brentford and the approach they take have the same majority shareholder as them. Danish champions are Midtjylland coming into it. And then, as I say, Başakşehir winning the Turkish league. And as Matt rightly says, have the likes of Demba Ba and Martin Skrtel amongst their ranks.
Yeah, I mean, like Matt, I don't know an awful lot. I think now, Guy, I think you're going to get to a point now where maybe if you're Jurgen Klopp in Liverpool, you start looking at it maybe a little bit geographically. So I think if you're the manager, I don't think Marseille or even Rennes a bad draw. If it's a game in which you're having to turn around sort of Wednesday to Saturday and you can maybe fly home the same night, if it's France, then I think that's sort of logistically the manager's going to have half an eye on that, whereby if it's, Lokomotiv Moscow, it probably means the players have to stay another night in Russia, then come back. It's less preparation time for the Premier League game of the weekend. I think sort of now, not to sort of do anyone disrespect in that group, but it's a much of a muchness really. And if we can sort of get a draw which is as close to home as possible, as little travel time as possible, I think Jurgen Klopp will take that. I don't think he'll be too bothered about sort of Midtjylland, Ferencváros, Hungarian outfit. I think they are, in terms of them sort of being rookies of the competition. Like I say, if it's a Marseille or a Rennes and he can get Liverpool back in Liverpool the same night to prepare for whatever Premier League game is off that weekend, then I think that's going to be sort of more of a priority when we get to sort of pot 4.
Yeah, Rennes, Başakşehir and Midtjylland, the debutants in the competition. Ferencváros actually have been in the Champions League before, last in it in 1995. But Dan, as you'll tell us, have more of a history with Liverpool than some may expect.
Well, they do. I mean, pot 4 really is full of kind of like Liverpool history, particularly for kind of like anoraks like me. Ferencváros were actually the first European team to ever win at Anfield in the, I think it was the old Fairs Cup, the precursor to the UEFA Cup in 1968, as you reminded me earlier, Guy. I said it was 69, so I wasn't quite bang on the money with that one. We've also got the first two sides, the first two teams that Liverpool won their first European Cups and UEFA Cups against, Borussia Mönchengladbach and Bruges of Belgium. Liverpool have also played Marseille quite frequently in the Champions League and the UEFA Cup actually in the last 10 to 15 years. So, yeah, there's some interesting ties in there. I'd back up Dan's point, really, that I think really Klopp will be hoping for certainly one closer to home rather than the Russian team or the Turkish team, because of the intense nature of how the next few months are going to be, that could make a significant difference in terms of preparation time. And the the whole setup surrounding the club nowadays is so professional, it's so slick and well organised in terms of how they refuel, how they rest. If Liverpool do end up having to trek to Moscow or wherever, then they will, they'll still go about it in the best possible way and make sure the players are prepared and refreshed as well as possible. But in a perfect world, I think, somewhere like Marseille or Bruges or Rennes even, where you could potentially fly home the same night, could make a crucial difference, because, the period between now and Christmas really is going to be a passage of time, a passage of football that I don't think really, we hear a lot said about the modern game, even before this pandemic, particularly from the likes of Jurgen Klopp, about how it's not really right and fair on the players to kind of flog them the way that the modern schedules do. But obviously these are unusual circumstances, and I think we haven't heard too much from Klopp about that recently, and understandably so, because I think just being able to get football back on is important for the players, the managers themselves, but also the industry. So I think it's just one of these where if Liverpool do end up with a mad hike halfway across Europe, they're just going to have to kind of swallow it really and get on with it.
Yeah, well, it looks as though we are getting towards the stage of actually the draw beginning to get underway. So, yeah, Group 4 there with a number of sides with historical context, with Liverpool as well as we say, Midtjylland, a side only, I think, 21 years old, same owner as the Brentford owner, Matthew Bentham. But we are getting ready for the group stage to get underway. If you want to comment, whether it be on our Blood Red YouTube channel or whether it be on Facebook, about maybe the dream or the dream group that Liverpool could have, or even the group of death that the Reds could well get. We'll try and get some of your comments up on the screen during the course of the group stage getting underway, as well as, of course, you can head over to the Liverpool Echo live reaction over on there as well. We are just waiting for it to all get underway, and I suppose this is where we just fill, guys, waiting for everything to kick off. Looks as though Didier Drogba might be one of the key protagonists in the draw taking place.
What a player. He would probably make my Premier League all-time 11, probably because he was the scourge of Liverpool, but the minute he came to England, what a footballer. And just sort of halcyon Jose Mourinho too, but he was everything that you would have wanted in a Mourinho side at that time. He was, his ability back to goal, his athleticism, his instinct. He was, for me, he was one of the best Premier League strikers to grace these shores, to be honest. I put him up there with Henry. I don't think he'd be as good in terms of impact, and obviously very different strikers, but I think, as an out-and-out centre-forward, he had Everton Drogba. Yeah,
and he was a scourge of Liverpool down before he even arrived at Chelsea when he was with Marseille in the UEFA Cup in 2004.
Well, he was. I was just going to say, in the build-up to that time, I think it was a quarter-final. And the first leg was at Anfield. I remember there was a lot of talk about him. I think everybody, there was already a kind of hint that Mourinho might end up at Chelsea, and he'd already been blazing a trail for Marseille. And there was a lot of talk about Drogba in the build-up to that first leg. And to be honest, from what I can remember, he didn't do much in the game. But if I remember rightly, Liverpool were leading 1-0. And I just remember towards the end of the match, I think it might have been the last 20 minutes, and we were 1-0 up, and you're thinking, 1-0 is always a good result, I think, in the first leg of a two-legged tie. You kind of just see this out, boys, and that's something decent to take over to France. And he literally had one chance, and he was just lethal and rifled it away. I think he scored in the second leg as well, which it's a bit of a sad. I always remember that game as kind of really the reluctantly accepting that Gerard Houlé's time was coming to an end. He was still persisting with his experiment of playing Igor Biscan at centre-back. And if I remember rightly, Biscan got sent off towards the end of the first half. And it came out after the match that at half-time, when I think it was 1-1 at the time, I think Heskey had scored, and then they'd equalised. So even though we were down to 10 men, it was 2-2 on aggregate. The game was still absolutely in the balance. But apparently Houlé spent most of half-time looking at TV replays as they're sending off rather than reorganising his team. And sadly, that kind of said to me that he wasn't the manager that he'd been before. And I always think very fondly of him. That treble year amongst my finest memories as Liverpool supporters, and obviously it's something that we're doing a series on Guy at the moment with podcasts, and we'll be doing right throughout the course of the season. But yeah, Drogba was absolutely, I agree with what Dan says, one of the finest strikers of the Premier League era, and I think there were a lot of Liverpool fans breathed a sigh of relief when he hung up his boots and could do us no more damage.
Yeah, we are having it explained right now how the group stage does work. As I said before, teams from the same country can't draw one another. So a team gets drawn and then which pot they will be going into. All very technical stuff. And it is one of those things that does sort of take a bit of time of getting through. So before we do see the draw actually play out, Matt, start with you first. And Liverpool, of course, coming into this, having reached back-to-back finals before last year, of course, going out in the round of 16. What do you think the expectation has to be for Liverpool this year as we get ready to start a Champions League season?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Obviously, last season you would have expected them to go further than what they did. Obviously, coming up against a difficult team in Atletico Madrid. And that is the thing, isn't it, with the Champions League? It can just be one of those things where what happens in the draw can sort of determine your fate, in terms of not even just the teams, but in terms of the order of the matches, whether you're home first, away first, that sort of things. All of those things have to be sort of taken into the equation. I mean, in terms of this season, what should Liverpool be aiming for? Well, they should be aiming to win it because, they're up there with Bayern Munich for me as the two favourites for the competition. So, yeah, at this stage, you'd say that is the aim. I'm sure every single Liverpool player, Jurgen Klopp as well, would say that was the aim. But it's one of those things. If Liverpool were to win the Premier League, maybe get a Carabao Cup or an FA Cup and got to the quarters, then, so be it. You can only win so many things each year, can't you? But yeah, certainly for me, Liverpool rightly right up there as one of the favourites, if not the favourites.
Yeah, as we got on screen, Danke, a lot of people seeming to want Atletico Madrid. As you said, the survey on the Echo said that they were the team to avoid, but quite a few Liverpool fans just wanting to take exact revenge for last season, it seems.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, particularly as well, I think, as soon as the draw was made, I remember thinking that's probably as tough a draw as we could have got. And obviously it proved that way. That being said, I still think about, I'm not running Adrian down at all. He did a good job for us last season, particularly when we were during Alisson's injury problems. But if Alisson hadn't been injured, I think we'd have gone through against Atletico. I didn't think we were that bad in the first leg. I was over there in Madrid for the first game as a fan. They got a lucky break from the corner in the first couple of minutes, and did what they had to do, played their game. But on a different night, Liverpool could have quite eased away from the Wanda Metropolitano with at least a draw or possibly a win. And then the second leg at Anfield, I thought, was one of our finest performances of the whole season. And last season was no ordinary season, let's be honest about it. Liverpool put in some unbelievable performances. And they were magnificent at times against Atletico. It was, sometimes the fates conspire against you. And obviously that happened. And fair play to Atletico, they did what they had to do. But the way, so they got themselves to Lisbon, didn't they, for the little mini tournament that ended it. But I think the way that they went out quite limply, didn't they, to Leipzig 2-1 in the quarterfinal. And I think watching that, thinking, how did they knock us out? You know what I mean? They're not a bad side. They do what they do. They've got a very good record in the Champions League in the last 6 or 7 years, been to 2 finals. But yeah, if we were to draw them, there's a part of me that would think, oh, crikey, here we go again. But the other part would be like, yeah, bring it on, because, and as I said before, I think some of the players and Klopp himself might even feel the same way. There's unfinished business there, and I would hope and expect that they would want to set the record straight.
Yeah, well, the draw is now underway. Didier Drogba doing the role of bringing the teams out of the hat, and the first team out, of course, is the champions Bayern Munich. Liverpool, of course, just waiting for their name to come out in this round. Dan Morgan, just as we wait for Liverpool to come out and see which groups these teams all filter into, what do you think the expectation this season for the Reds has to be?
To win the competition. There's no greater opportunity for Liverpool to go and win the Premier League and Champions League, in my opinion. I think they're the best team in the world, and I'm not just saying that from a Liverpool point of view. I don't think there's a team better than them. And I completely echo what Dan says, that you sort of left scratching your head with how Atletico get through that night at Anfield, especially how they win the game. Because for 90 minutes, I thought Liverpool were absolutely superb. I thought actually Chamberlain in particular was incredible. Yeah. But Ollie Connolly wrote something on our site the other night, and Liverpool are out. There you go. Liverpool are C. D.
Yeah, D. Yeah, after Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Porto, and Liverpool, fourth team out of the hat. But let you finish your point there.
Yeah, Ollie wrote something the other night that we need to talk about Liverpool winning a treble. that's how good this side is, and we shouldn't be sort of apologetic over that. Liverpool need to attack this competition this season, and they should be going at it to win it.
Yeah, it certainly does seem to be the case. So we have had Liverpool out, waiting to see who joins them in Group D as it is. We will, as we say, have the ticker going along as we go through the broadcast, bring you who is in Liverpool's group. And as it is, it's a case of waiting and seeing. Plenty of people still getting in touch, and plenty of people actually agreeing with you, Dan, that Liverpool do need to really show what they've got in this competition and go all the way and try and win it this season. I suppose that is the benchmark, having reached 2 finals in the last 3 seasons. It is something that Jurgen Klopp has shown that, of course, Atletico aside from that, Liverpool have an incredible record under him.
Yeah, Liverpool very much the team to beat, aren't they? I mean, I'm sure, as much as we're sat here discussing who do we want to avoid, I'm sure the team that's on every other team's lips is Liverpool. That's the one that they won't want to get. So, along with Bayern Munich, as I said before, very much the 2 strong favourites for the competition. And, whoever Liverpool get, they can be confident. But there are still things to be discussed, and there are still things, as both Dans have said before, in terms of the travel and that sort of thing. It is going to make a huge amount of difference for Liverpool. So it's one of those where Liverpool will always be confident, but there are marginal advantages that you can get depending on the order in which these teams come out of the hat.
Dan, on the point of saying that Liverpool need to attack the treble, then who do you think, even looking towards sort of the latter stage of this competition, obviously we're in pot 1 seeing the elite sides, as it were, come out of the hat. Who do you think the contenders for winning the Champions League will be this season?
Well, I mean, I think you have to have the current holders, Bayern Munich, up there. They're a winning machine, aren't they? They win the Bundesliga every year. They've obviously lost one of the best players, Thiago Alcantara, who obviously is now in the Liverpool squad, and we'll be hoping that he can do for us what he did for them. But yeah, they are an excellent team, Bayern, and it would have been fascinating to see. If Liverpool had got through against, I think that would have been the way the draw went. That would have been the final, wouldn't it? If we'd beaten Atletico, we'd have played Leipzig, then Paris, and Bayern were on the other side of the draw. So I think they probably are the 2 best teams in Europe. I'd agree with what Dan said before that I certainly don't think Munich are better than us. I think they're better than they were when we played 18 months ago. Obviously, Liverpool played them in the last 16 en route to Madrid. And in the end, won 3-1, which might look comfortable, but it wasn't really until the last, 10 minutes really of the second leg in the Allianz Arena. Barcelona will be interesting, I suppose, under Koeman. You do get the impression there's still some serious cracks behind the scenes there. Only last week when Luis Suarez left, you had Messi putting out a couple of fairly acerbic comments about the way he was treated and how that was no surprise to him. Ronald Koeman's management career, probably fair to say, hasn't quite lived up to the heights he hit as a player, but he is still experienced. And I was reading an article yesterday that Coutinho had a decent start. Their league campaign, I think, began last weekend. And even if they've flattered to deceive in recent years, they've still got the kind of players who on their day and are the kind of club that on the day that can deliver. Juventus, again, similar to Bayern, they're so dominant at home that you always kind of expect them to be up there. But that can be a bit of a double-edged sword sometimes, because if they are kind of cruising through their league a little bit, is it harder for them to raise their game in these 2-legged ties when they're up against better opposition? And Paris, got to the final last year. They've spent a lot of money in recent years to bring some top players in. You'd expect them to try and go again, obviously having got further than they've ever got before. In terms of like maybe an unexpected one, I always like watching Dortmund. I always think the kind of the personality, the character of the club. It's no surprise that I think there's a Jurgen Klopp legacy there in terms of their approach and the way they play. And if we weren't to win it, I would like to see someone like them win it. But Liverpool are the team to beat. There's no getting away from that.
No, I think you're right there with the Liverpool being the team to beat. We are between each pot being drawn, having the UEFA goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, and forward of the season revealed. The goalkeeper went to Manuel Neuer. The defender's gone to Joshua Kimmich of Bayern Munich as well. Dan Morgan, feel as though there's going to be a theme running through this, that Bayern Munich might well sweep up like I think Liverpool did the year before.
Yeah, fully deserved with Kimmich, by the way. I think he's been tremendous for Bayern Munich, and he's really developed as a footballer. But as Dan said before, losing Thiago Alcantara can't be overstated. He's expected to move into that slot, Kimmich. I mean, he's a world-class operator, but to shift him permanently inside will rob Bayern of something at right back. So, it's a square pegs and round holes approach, if you like. And Hansi Flick has sort of been vocal about not having enough strength and depth. Okay, they signed Leroy Sané, but he's asked for cover at right back. He's asked for different parts of the team to be sort of patched up, and it hasn't been. So I just wonder, I wasn't spouting hyperbole before. My point was that, I don't think Bayern will be able to go again at the level they have. I think it was Paris Saint-Germain's last roll of the dice, to be honest, with that team. It felt very much that way. And yeah, I think Liverpool have shown already in the early part of the season that if anyone had any doubts about their hunger, it's still there. It's more than burning the embers of wanting to go and win another trophy. So yeah, I'd imagine this presentation to be Bayern Munich heavy, but hopefully next season's will be laden with Liverpool yet again.
Yeah, I hope that is the case. And I even saw today that Bayern Munich linked with Tariq Lamptey from Brighton and Hove Albion. So they certainly are in the market for maybe another right back, despite having Benjamin Pavard, the French World Cup winning right fullback. But Matt, just get sort of your thoughts on all of that in terms of the contenders and whatnot, and obviously Kimmich as well. There are elite sides obviously within this competition that Liverpool at some stage might not be in the group stage, but will have to obviously come up against.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to make the point as well. Manuel Neuer getting the Goalkeeper of the Year award a few minutes ago as well. Again, massively deserved. Bayern Munich, absolutely spectacular goalkeeper. And we spoke to David James actually just a few days ago. He was saying, he was comparing him to Alisson Becker, obviously Liverpool's goalkeeper, and sort of saying that, for him at this moment in time, Manuel Neuer is better just purely on form at this moment in time. But long term, there's no doubt really that Alisson is the best in the world for him. And I'd have to go along with that. I'd say probably Alisson for me is better at this stage in time as well. But obviously, David James, ex-goalkeeper, ex-Liverpool, of course, very much value his opinion. And he sort of compared Alisson to Cristiano Ronaldo, which I thought was an interesting one. Obviously, still a relatively young goalkeeper, but was suggesting, in a sense, that he's one of those goalkeepers that his level is so high that even when he's 36, 37 years old, he could still be very much up there as one of the best. So yeah, plenty of time for Liverpool to go back and win these awards in future. As Dan said, obviously we hope to be talking about Liverpool as European champions and sweeping the board, but I think certainly for this year it's only right that Bayern Munich were taking these individual awards, and I'm sure they'll be there or thereabouts next season. I think now, as we've said, Bayern Munich and Liverpool very much the two sides that you think are most complete and most sort of overall would be the best packages. You look at teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, they've struggled. They've not been able to do what they wanted really in the transfer market. Barcelona in particular with a new manager, obviously the stuff that went on with Lionel Messi, it's not been an easy summer for them. And Manchester City as well, of course, you can't forget them. Very much a team that every single year you say, well, they've got to be up there. They've spent so much money. They've got Pep Guardiola in purely for this to be the case for them to win this Champions League. And, it's not quite happened yet. So I don't think we should, completely write off all of those sort of teams yet. But for me, Bayern Munich and Liverpool are a step ahead at this moment in time. But I suppose, what is it, 8-9 months down the line when we get to, the very latter stages of the tournament, I suppose one or two teams could have strengthened. There'll be obviously a January transfer window between then. So plenty of things that can happen, but certainly as the draw takes place, you'd certainly put, Bayern Munich as holders and Liverpool as well as Premier League champions and one of the best teams in the world. You'd certainly put those two as the top two.
Yeah, we are getting into pot 2 now. The team's just about to be drawn out for pot 2, so we'll wait and see who Liverpool draw. But as you can see on screen, Rio's got in touch, says, I hope Liverpool, Barcelona, Atalanta and Marseille. Dan Morgan, that'd be some draw, wouldn't it? But if we're taking the point that Liverpool are the team to beat in this tournament, you wouldn't be scared of taking on both sides.
No. I'd be more disappointed that I couldn't go to Anfield and watch those games, to be honest, Guy. So yeah, we'll see who comes out now. But yeah, like I said before, nothing for Liverpool to fear from anyone for me.
Well, we got Atletico Madrid in with Bayern.
They'll be drawn in the group now.
Right, yeah, no, sorry, yeah, that's how it's going to work. Sorry, for pot 2, we didn't have it for the first round because, yeah, so they are into A anyway. They are in with Bayern Munich anyway. So we almost jumped the gun there, but we were correct in that. So Liverpool then avoiding Atletico Madrid. Dan K, your thoughts?
Well, we've avoided them at the group stage. I would expect Atletico and Bayern to qualify from that group. So it's not inconceivable Liverpool could still face Diego Simeone's men in the knockout stages. But I think Klopp will be happy not to maybe have to revisit that so quickly, given, as I've said, already a number of times, the mad, compressed nature of what the next couple of months are going to be. Liverpool will be hoping really for as straightforward a passage as possible, and that wouldn't have been the case with Atletico. So, yeah, I think there'll be a size of relief across Merseyside and the wider Liverpool fan base that Liverpool have evaded Atletico for now.
Yeah, Chelsea, the next side out of the hat, of course, can't take on Liverpool. Matt Addison, Sevilla. So Matt, Chelsea in with Sevilla aside, of course, Liverpool faced after getting back into the Champions League for the first time under Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, decent team actually, Sevilla. I think it's not a bad draw for Chelsea. There are certainly, more difficult teams than them, but they're still a difficult team to play against. We saw when they played Liverpool how sort of high intensity they were. Very, very difficult. Sevilla, obviously one of the better teams in Spain. FC Barcelona, the next one to be drawn out as we speak. And again, there's so many top teams, isn't there? I mean, you wouldn't want to disrespect Sevilla and say that was a decent draw for Chelsea, but I suppose relative that isn't too bad for them.
No, you would probably have to say that is a fair enough draw for them. Then Chelsea in with Sevilla. We'll keep an eye on where the other English sides do end up. Just waiting, obviously, to see who.
Juventus.
Pardon?
Barcelona get Juventus.
So Barcelona then in with Juventus, another big side, Dan Morgan, that Liverpool have avoided.
Yeah, like Dan K says before, you'd expect both of them to qualify, but yeah, both Spaniards now out of Liverpool's reach, which is, I suppose, we're looking at, if we want the easy draw, if we like, that's a bonus for us. So yeah, I think Liverpool will be really happy with that.
Yeah, Liverpool now then from pot 2 can only draw Shakhtar Donetsk, Borussia Dortmund, or Ajax. Dan, Ajax still the side.
Well, Ajax has just come out, and I have predicted, Mystic Dan, I could be wrong. Don't put your lottery numbers on just yet. Is it Florin Malouda? Yeah, it's Malouda. Yeah. Who Liverpool were linked with for a hell of a long time, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think before he ended up at Chelsea. It is told you.
There we go then. First team into Liverpool's group is Ajax. The season that Liverpool fans, of course, can't go to Amsterdam to be there. And Liverpool will play Ajax. And Liverpool, of course, as you were saying before, Dan, don't really have much of a history with Ajax for two steeped European giants of the game. 66 the last time the two sides met, and very nearly did meet in the final in 2019. But Matt, your thoughts on Ajax drawing Liverpool?
Yeah, it's a glamour tie, isn't it? It's a tie that Liverpool will be favourites to go through and play against them and win. So, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game. As I said before, it's a really interesting Ajax team. I think obviously everyone saw what they did a couple of seasons ago as Liverpool went on to be champions. Very nearly got through themselves, didn't they, to that final? And they are a very, very good team. Obviously, much European pedigree, and I suppose for Liverpool that's not too bad. Not too far to travel as well. I wouldn't have thought they would travel back the same night. It's not quite as close as somewhere like Rennes, is it? But not a bad draw, I wouldn't say. Certainly, there are far worse teams to have drawn out than Ajax.
Yeah, keep giving us your reaction, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook. Ian Richardson has got in touch on Facebook, says Liverpool v Ajax is a great fixture. To be fair, Mark Jones says we'll take them. So I suppose geographically as well, on the point we were making, Matt just said it there, Dan Morgan, that actually it's not too bad a tie for Liverpool. And Ajax in the last few years, of course, from that side that reached the semi-finals of the Champions League, have been broken up somewhat.
Yeah, I think it's as good as Liverpool could hope for in pot 2. I think geographically it's not far at all to travel. It's a great stadium, steeped in history. I think it's got everything about it, apart from the fact that 10,000 Scousers can't go over to Amsterdam, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's a tie that I think Liverpool will be more than happy with. I think it sort of lends itself to Liverpool's style of play too. Ajax are not a conservative side. They're not a side who will try and really, sit in really, really deep and frustrate Liverpool. They'll still try and play even though they've lost players. And I think it'll be one where, we'll get to see Jurgen Klopp pit himself against another European giant. But yeah, it's a tie that steeped in history, and it's got pure pedigree to it. So I'm excited for it, even though we can't be there.
Yeah, I have to say I've taken my eye off the ball somewhat. Missed the side, but Borussia Dortmund have just come out, and they'll be in the same group as Zenit St. Petersburg.
PSG and Manchester United as well, I think.
Ooh. So that obviously a repeat of the game, effectively, I suppose, that all Liverpool fans rub their hands at the game that got Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the Manchester United job.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they have gone into that one. They are the final side they're the side that's come out of there, can't go in with Liverpool, so of course have gone in with Paris Saint-Germain. So, we will be waiting to see how things do play out here for the rest of the time, coming towards the end of pot 2. But as we say, Liverpool drawing Ajax, a great draw for them. Atletico Madrid are in with Bayern Munich, and I suppose probably too early to predict any groups of death, but Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid and Juventus and Barcelona, Dan Kay, two groups with two giants in.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly something Liverpool can look at. I mean, we can't take Ajax for granted. I was, the night after that unforgettable fight back against Barcelona, I remember chatting to a mate who was a Tottenham fan, watching their semi-final against Ajax, and I was saying to him, "Oh yeah, I hope you make it." And I really, really didn't. I really wanted us to play Ajax, partly because you want to play a European team in the European final, but also just because of the romance of Liverpool and Ajax. The famous tiles we were talking about beforehand, hammered in the fog in Amsterdam. Shankly convinced everybody that we could turn it around, and 60,000 crammed themselves into Anfield. And it is bizarre that to be fair, Ajax haven't maybe maintained the same level of. They haven't always been in the Champions League every year, have they? But Liverpool will be relieved not to have the extra kind of circus surrounding a huge game against the Barcelona or an Atletico. There's still some quite big names lurking in pots C and D, or 3 and 4, which obviously we haven't got to yet. But I think, as Dan said, I think realistically that's probably as good as Liverpool could have hoped for at a pot 2.
Yeah, it does certainly seem that way. And now we've got midfielder of the year, and that's gone to Kevin De Bruyne, Matt Addison.
Yeah, fully deserved again. An absolutely wonderful midfielder. The closest thing I think we've seen to Steven Gerrard, which is a massive compliment to him, but an absolutely unbelievable footballer. And Manchester City, I think it was Porto that they drew, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was right. Yeah.
Obviously, we've got to assume that Manchester City, I think, will be closest to Liverpool in the Premier League title race. Obviously, the ramifications of that, you would have hoped that they could have a slightly more challenging draw than that, but there we are. That is the draw, isn't it? But I suppose Manchester City's good fortune in that sense has continued. But yeah, Kevin De Bruyne, fully deserved midfielder of the season. For me, the best player in the Premier League last season, and such a talented, gifted midfielder. He can just do absolutely everything, can't he? It'd be very interesting, actually. Not that it's going to happen. It'd be very, very interesting to see if you put him into this Liverpool team, what would happen? What would he do under Jurgen Klopp? How would he be different to what he is under Pep Guardiola? But I think that's possibly me just dreaming a little bit there.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in that respect, but an absolutely fantastic player. So just round up then after Group 2 has finished, how the groups are looking right now. Group A has Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid within it. Then Group B is Real Madrid and Shakhtar Donetsk. Group C, FC Porto and Manchester City. Liverpool, of course, in Group D have Ajax in their group. Group E is Sevilla and Chelsea. Group F, Zenit and Dortmund. Group G, Juventus and Barcelona. And finally, we've got Group F, PSG and Manchester United. So we'll just have to wait and see how the rest of it does play out. But at the moment, things ticking along nicely for Liverpool. A reminder of the sides in Pot 3: Kiev, Salzburg, Leipzig, Inter Milan, Olympiacos, Lazio, Krasnodar, and Atalanta. So looking at the groups as they stand, Liverpool can still draw any one of those sides because, of course, there are no English or Dutch sides in there. Any preferences, guys, as we go into Pot 3 of who the team you might want to take out of there is? Come to you, Dan Morgan.
Again, it's just sort of who you're looking at in terms of wanting to avoid, really. I'd probably say there's no one really I'm concerned about, but if Inter Milan sort of stay away from Liverpool, I'll be happy with that. I think they're a good side. And then, I think now with Ajax, it just gives Liverpool a bit of breathing space, because you would imagine it would be between the team who's in Pot 2 and Pot 3 in Liverpool's group to fight it out for second place in the group if normality sort of ensues. So yeah, I think it will be someone probably of Ajax's ilk and standing. So it will probably be sort of Liverpool preparing themselves for a similar level of game, and then hopefully Pot 4, can be an opponent who, not to disrespect anyone, but ends up sort of being a bit of a whipping boy. And it's not really that often you see a side in Pot 4 sort of take it by storm and qualify from the group. So yeah, I think that's sort of giving Liverpool a bit of breathing space, but there's no one really there who, to me, I want to avoid. And, I think there's other groups who will be having a keen eye on it now, especially sort of those two groups that we mentioned before with two good sides. If they sort of get lumbered with the big hitters in Pot 3, then you sort of you'll be having a real good look at those on match days. So yeah, let's just see what comes next for Liverpool. I think they've given themselves a bit of breathing space, definitely.
Yeah, and looking at Pot 3 historically for Liverpool, the last 3 years in the Champions League, Salzburg, Napoli and Spartak Moscow have been in this Pot for Liverpool in the past, Dan. Okay, so it has thrown up sort of tough sides in the past. Inter Milan, probably the ones that spring to mind, or RB Leipzig. But as we sort of reiterated a number of times now, there's not really anyone in there to be wary of, certainly without being disrespectful to Ajax, with Ajax coming out in Pot 2.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think this is really where the major kind of stresses and strains from the lower two groups come from the geographical aspect of it. The difference between having to go to Kiev or having to play someone like Atalanta. And I think the interesting thing about Atalanta is obviously not quite as much of a thing now without crowds, but they were playing all their Champions League games in the San Siro last year, which, I think Bergamo's about an hour and a half away from Milan. So yeah, I'm sure they still had 10 or 20,000 of their fans there. But I always kind of got the impression that might actually be a bit of a handicap for them. But obviously it didn't prove to be the case last year, because they qualified. I think they were in the same group as Manchester City, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. I think they became the first, if I'm right, the first team in Champions League history to lose their first 3 games and still make it through to the knockout phase, because they lost.
I'd have to pull you on only because I remember Bobby Robson's Newcastle doing that in the early 2000s. But it may well be
since it's changed to a knockout phase straight after a second group phase.
Quite possibly. Liverpool had a similar situation the year we won it, 2018-19. Lost all 3 away games, didn't we, to Napoli, Red Star, and Paris. But won the home games. They weren't consecutively. So yeah, it's the travel aspect. I think is the main thing that would be borne in mind in this group. But realistically, Liverpool are. It's not. I was actually thinking about it last night. I think that this is Liverpool's 4th consecutive year in the Champions League, and it already kind of feels like we are part of the furniture again. And I was obviously we had a similar run under Rafa Benitez between 2004 and 2010, and that was 6 consecutive seasons. Whereas, sorry to bring this up, Guy, but obviously Arsenal haven't been in the Champions League for a little while. But until then, wasn't it something like 18 consecutive? Yeah. I'm not having a go.
No. You're quite right. Yeah,
making irrelevant points, and I think that shows what Liverpool have done in recent years. That already we feel this is our domain. This is where we belong to be. This is where we should be, and there's no one really to fear from there. But we know that Jurgen Klopp will do his due diligence and will treat every opponent with the requisite amount of respect.
Yeah, well, Krasnodar are the first side out for pot 3, incidentally, as it goes, and they've gone into E. So they joined Sevilla and Chelsea in that one. Matt Addison, your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a long away trip, isn't it? So I suppose Liverpool will be kind of glad to avoid that, but it's shaping up to be a nice little group there for Chelsea. I think it's, as we said, we don't want to disrespect any of the teams in the competition, but I think those two, you'd be very, very happy with them. And RB Leipzig, the next team to come out. I think this, for me, along with Inter Milan, would be the most difficult thing for Liverpool to be able to deal with, not obviously in terms of the distance, but certainly in terms of the quality that they have, even without Timo Werner, an excellent outfit.
Yeah, certainly the case. So we wait to see who they draw. As you could probably work out, I'm on a delay to some of the other guys here. Have we got a group for RB Leipzig yet?
Just about to be drawn out now, so it should be any second. Florent Malouda doing the honours. Obviously, Liverpool Group D, that's the one to watch out for. And it's Group H.
It's Group H. So they go in with PSG and Manchester United. So that does look like a group on paper, doesn't it, Dan Morgan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think Manchester United are in any great shape at the minute. I think that's obvious for everyone to see. They might do a bit of business in the next week, but I think they've got the work cut out, most definitely. And I actually wouldn't fancy them there, despite not even having a fourth seed yet in the group. So, yeah, I think it's a tough ask for them.
It does certainly look to be the case. So Atalanta, the next side to come out. Manchester United's group there on stream. Paris Saint-Germain, Manchester United and RB Leipzig. Have we got a team for Atalanta, Matt? A group, a destination?
Not quite yet. Same situation as before, just unscrewing the ball as we speak.
Gave the ball a hell of a spin then, didn't he?
Did he? Yeah.
I thought Shane Warne was in there.
And it is big as well. It is.
It is big.
So they are in with Liverpool. So Atalanta and Ajax. So trips to Holland and Italy to come for Liverpool as it is. And Atalanta, Dan Morgan, a side who play quite neat and tidy football.
Yeah, I mean, from a Liverpool perspective, you'll be probably hoping that they had a flash in the pan last year, and that will probably be a 1-year thing. I can't see it in terms of them repeating what they did last year in the Champions League, but again, a side who plays expansive attacking football and likes to use the pitch in front of them, and I think that will suit Liverpool. I think, like I said before, I think it just backs the point up that over the last 2 years, you can probably put Atalanta and Ajax at a very similar level. So I think already they'll be thinking they've got a fight on the hands between the two of them to make second in that group. So, yeah, I mean, I think now you just got to look at what Liverpool get in the fourth stage of the group, and then sort of look to get as many points as they can early on with the games that they've got. I mean, there's no one there who sort of jumps out as Liverpool and to qualify. And I'm just looking now at sort of Atalanta's players they've let go. They've lost Timothy Castagna to Leicester. He already looks a good player. Gianluca Mancini, he went to Roma, and then there's a couple of others. So they've not quite been as decimated as Ajax was, but I think Liverpool will have more than enough for them.
Yeah, certainly. And Olympiacos coming out, are they in Group C with Manchester City and FC Porto? They're Kostas Tsimikas' old side. So, yeah, the group for Liverpool, though, is taking shape very nicely. Dan K, let you have your say, because I don't think you've had your say since Atalanta came out.
Yeah, just to add in one more that we've missed while Dan was chatting, Kiev with Juventus and Barcelona. It's not the easiest draw Liverpool could have had in Group C. I mean, you'd have to kind of think what Dan said is correct, that, Atalanta did exceed all expectations for themselves last season. It really, it was. I watched watching their quarterfinal against Paris. I think it was the first of the 4 quarterfinals, and it was, I'd read a couple of articles about. I think, as I mentioned before, Bergamo was really suffered very, very badly with the pandemic, and it was, as we know in our city, football can provide an enormous lift for people in times of hardship, and I think their run in Europe and into the knockout stages really gave the people of Bergamo a wonderful lift at a time they needed it, and it's a great story. The fact that they had this kind of heartbreaking end, losing 2 goals in stoppage time when they were literally a minute or 2 away from the semi-finals, can that drive them on this season? We'll find out. Dan obviously pointed out they have lost a couple of key players, but it's we know 2 out of the 3 opponents so far, and they all look like they're going to be really good matches to watch. Atalanta and Ajax both like to play the kind of football, the offensive, progressive football that Liverpool play, and that we as fans like to see. And so it's a really enticing, exciting draw, and it just kind of twists the knife a little bit, because I think both of them as well, Ajax and Atalanta, would have been terrific away trips for the travelling cop, which sadly won't be the case on this occasion. But I'm sure that both sides will be looking to put on a good show, and Liverpool will be, I think, so far relatively satisfied if they can get a reasonable draw out of Pot C. There's nothing too dramatic in terms of travel thus far. I'm not tempting fate and Liverpool get sent to Russia or anything yet, but yeah, I think so far Jurgen Klopp and his players will be reasonably satisfied with how the balls have fallen for them.
Yeah, trips to Russia, Turkey, or Hungary could still follow, Dan. So you may well have jinxed fate there.
Hungary is a great place. I went to the game against Debrecen 11 years ago. Fantastic place, Budapest. And it's not that far.
No, fair enough. But the rest of the pot 3 teams then have come out. Inter Milan are in with Real Madrid and Shakhtar Donetsk. Lazio in with Zenit and Dortmund, and Salzburg in with Bayern and Atletico Madrid. So Group A is another one, Matt, that's looking quite good on paper.
Yeah, it's a tasty one, isn't it, that one? But I think, obviously, that's not Liverpool's primary concern. Liverpool's primary concern to get through and see what happens from there. But yeah, certainly, I think a lot of Liverpool fans will be glad to have avoided Atletico Madrid, as we said before. Obviously, in with Bayern, that'll be a really good game. There's a few really good games, to be honest. I think Real Madrid and Inter Milan in the same group. You look at that one and think that should be, a very, very interesting one. But yeah, I suppose you look at Salzburg there and think they've been very, very unfortunate, because in Group A, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, and Salzburg so far, yeah, it's not looking too good for Jesse Marsch's side, is it?
No, it isn't looking too good there, as you say. But Rufus T. Firefly's got in touch with us on YouTube and says, why City's draw is always so easy? Pass that one over to you, Dan Morgan.
I don't know. I'm just waiting for them to draw Burton Albion fourth in that group, to be honest. So, it's... look, they're a great side, and they'll probably... They're not a great side, they're a good side. I should correct myself. They're a good side, and they'll probably finish and qualify from whatever group they were in. We should put that in there. But, Pep Guardiola does have a problem with the latter stages of the European Cup, and I think he does have a problem with this Man City side right now. I really thought they were going to go on and win the Champions League this season, or last season, sorry. And yet again, they proved themselves to suffer on a stage, reaching the quarterfinals onwards, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do once they get to around that stage again, because I think they will, unless they have a real tricky draw in the last 16, which again, back in the form of what they get in both domestic and European draws, doesn't seem to be the case. But it's not worth crying it in with Manchester City and draws. Like I say, if Liverpool were to get them in the quarterfinal of the European Cup again, then there'd be certainly a much more relaxed approach, I think, from many Liverpool fans. It'd still be a huge game. It'd still be a game everyone would want to win. But in terms of sort of fearing the worst from City, you think about that tie in 17, 18, it was a real benchmark, a real stepping stone of Jurgen Klopp's journey. I think that Mohamed Salah equaliser at the Etihad Stadium is one of the most iconic goals of Jurgen Klopp's tenure.
100%.
It's incredible. I can't watch it without sort of getting overly emotional about it. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain screaming in Mohamed Salah's face, the blue smoke, everything like that. Yeah, I love it. I might watch it when this video finishes, to be honest. So yeah, we look at it from pure Liverpool perspective. We'd take Manchester City now. So I don't think it's worth wasting your energy on who City do and don't get personally.
Yeah, no, our producer Kai is doing an absolutely fantastic job of overlaying the groups for us. Group B, just before Real Madrid, Shakhtar and Inter Milan, and a lot of people getting in touch saying that they're glad that Liverpool have avoided Inter Milan. We've got Group C. And Group D, of course, is the one to look at, Matt. Liverpool, Ajax and Atalanta. We've seen Robert Lewandowski, or Lewandowski, maybe we should say, get the Forward of the Year award as we just do wait for Pot 4 to get underway.
Yeah, again, you can't argue with that, can you? Probably the most unfortunate person that the Ballon d'Or not taking place this season, because I think he would definitely have been right up there. I'm sure he would have won that and absolutely would have been well deserved as well. So many goals, as Thomas Muller liked to put it, Lewandowski, as you say, an unbelievable player. I mean, even this season, you've seen him. I think he produced an assist on the opening day of the Bundesliga season with a Rabona. There's just so many different things about his game. He's obviously a player that Jurgen Klopp knows well as well. It's one of those things, really. I'm sure we always talk about Roberto Firmino as being the ideal sort of Jurgen Klopp forward, and I think it's sort of forgotten really how Lewandowski was sort of made into the superstar that he is by Klopp. So yeah, I'm sure at some point if Liverpool do play Bayern, that's a narrative to be explored further. But just for today, I mean, what a striker he is. The best in the world at being a number 9 at this moment in time. Right up there with anybody last season, all over the pitch. He was absolutely crucial for Bayern. I'm not sure how many goals it was in the end that he scored, but I do know David Wagner was sacked from Schalke earlier this week, and since Schalke last won a game, Lewandowski, I think, had scored 27 goals. So I think that sort of sums up the job that Schalke had been doing, but also the job that Lewandowski had as well.
Yeah, just rounding up the rest of the groups as they stand as we get ready for Pot 4's teams to come out. Group E is Sevilla, Chelsea and Krasnodar. Group F, Zenit, St. Petersburg, Dortmund and Lazio. In G, Juventus, Barcelona and Dinamo Kiev. And in Group H, PSG, Manchester United and RB Leipzig. I've still got on my feed Lewandowski talking away. We're not any nearer the Pot 4 draw happening, are we, Dan Kay?
No, they're still chewing the fat, sitting on their suits on their little high chairs, but I'm sure it can't be too far to go. Looks like Lewandowski's been hitting the sunbeds in his couple of weeks off, having his well-earned summer break. What a player he is. It was one of the great joys of European football, isn't it? Is to see these absolute elite players coming up against them and seeing how your team does. And yeah, when Liverpool drew Bayern Munich, a bit similar to Ajax, really, in that maybe even more so the fact that Liverpool and Bayern, such huge names of European football, and obviously they drew level with us with 6 wins when they beat Paris. But the last 16 tie in 2019, that was only the second time. I think the second or third time that they've played. Certainly the first time in the Champions League era. It was the first time since 1981. So it was. I remember really looking forward to this in advance of the matches against Bayern to see Lewandowski in the flesh, and I think it says a lot about how what an outstanding side Liverpool were and obviously still are. That the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez and the rest, and Robbo and Trent didn't really give him much of a look in over the two ties. The only goal Bayern scored was an own goal by Joel Matip, which was, I think, it was forced by a run from Gnabry down the left. But he's an outstanding forward, isn't he? One that Jurgen Klopp obviously knows very well from their time together at Borussia Dortmund. And I remember watching the final. Remember, obviously 8-2, wasn't it? Bayern destroyed Barcelona in the quarterfinal. And I do remember, and that I think was the Friday game, the third of the 4 quarterfinals. And I remember having this uncomfortable feeling afterwards that have they shot their bolt too early? Because you beat a team. Obviously, Barcelona aren't exactly in their best moments, but they look nailed on winners. But we've all seen it in football before, where a team can put a great performance together and then someone nips them on the line. And I was worried that is it going to open up for Man City? But Bayern deserved to win it for their performances, particularly in the knockout stages. But when they beat Paris, I remember thinking, I'm quite happy for us to kind of cede the title to them. And I actually hope we get them next year, possibly in the final, because I think they are the best two teams in Europe. And I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp and co do find themselves coming up against Bayern as the season comes. Florent Malouda is about to Marseille, the first team out of this draw, and they are going to go into group. Come on, Florent, hold it up, lad. C, I think that is. Yeah. So they get Porto, Man City, Olympiacos, Marseille.
Yeah, so that is the first complete group. Group C. We did have a quiz question that was on the screen before from Dr. Evil about the sides who had won the Champions League 3 years in a row. Ajax, one of the sides. Can anyone name the other two?
Bayern,
Real Madrid,
all through the 70s, and Real Madrid as
Real Madrid.
There's five.
Moscow, the next team to come out.
Lokomotiv Moscow are the second ones out of the hat. I have to say, I'm not as good as Christian Walsh last year, who was able to, off the top of his head, work out which groups they can all go into. But have they got a group yet, Matt?
It's one of two, and I think Liverpool can be one of those two.
Yeah, Liverpool can be.
Just unboxing the result of that now, and it's Group A. So a very tough draw for them.
Bayern, Atletico, Salzburg, Moscow.
And Lokomotiv Moscow. So, that is a tough draw for them. Liverpool avoiding them thus far. So still awaiting who will complete Liverpool's group, which, of course, has Liverpool, Ajax and Atalanta in. And, we could be in for a bit of a wait. Or it might be the next team out the hat. Have we got the next ones out, Dan?
It's Club Brugge, Simon Mignolet's side.
Simon Mignolet's side. And also, of course, the side that Liverpool did beat in the 78 European Cup final at Wembley. Kenny Dalglish scoring the only goal. Yeah,
and the 76 UEFA Cup as well.
Yeah, over 2 legs of the UEFA Cup.
Also, as well, I think in terms of travel and the actual logistics of it, I think this would be one that would kind of suit Liverpool quite well. Played them in 2005-06 as well, I think. Remember Cisse scoring a volley from a corner over there?
Was Anderlecht?
Yeah,
I was at Anderlecht.
I was there. Yeah, I went to that.
Group F.
Group F. So it won't be Liverpool. We gave them the big talk up there, but it isn't.
Zenit, Dortmund, Lazio, Brugge.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of groups completed, still though awaiting the completion of Liverpool's Group D. So we've still got a number of teams in the hat, and we had 2 out so far, Marseille and Club Brugge. So we are just still waiting for the likes of Rennes, Ferencváros, Istanbul. Have they come out?
They've just got pulled, yeah. So they are the next ones to be placed in a group once Florent gets his cue.
Well, we do just wait.
You just put different balls in a different bowl then. But I'm sure it's all perfectly above board.
It's very, very complicated, isn't it? I'm scared every single year they'll get it wrong and have to start again after an hour and a half. But
God, imagine.
It's Group H. Group
H. It's Man United's group in Paris.
Again, though, for Manchester United, it's not a trip that they'll be wanting to make, is it?
That's a really tough group for them. But another good one for Liverpool to avoid, I think. We'll save Istanbul for the final. Touch wood. Drogba pulls out Rennes.
This would do nicely.
Yeah, northwest of France would be a nice, easy trip, and a side, of course, who've brought through a number of interesting young players in recent times. Ismail Assar is a player who came through there. They lost, incidentally, we had a mention of Arsenal before. They lost to Arsenal in the Europa League round of 16 a couple of seasons ago. So there we go. We can have a mention once again there.
Can't help but get the Gunners in somewhere, can you, Guy?
Well, if you're going to bait me, I'll have to get them in somewhere, exactly.
Here we are. It's Group E.
Chelsea's group.
Group E, so Chelsea have their group complete. They have Sevilla, Krasnodar and Rennes. So you'd have to say for Chelsea, they've probably come out with a very, very strong group there, Dan Morgan.
Yeah, very, very
not
favourable.
Strong, a favourable group, yeah.
Yeah, very favourable. Just wonder whether Frank Lampard will still be in a job by the time the group comes to an end. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
FC Midtjylland, the next team to come out.
Oh, these would be a great side for
a very good draw, I think, for Liverpool. This
Danish, is that right?
Yeah,
Correct,
Danish. Yeah, Danish champions.
Looks like one of three, one of which is Liverpool's group.
Yeah. Yeah, we are down to the final three groups, so they can go into any of the final three.
It is D.
It is Group D. So Midtjylland do come into Group D with Liverpool, completes Liverpool's group. Then Ajax, Atalanta, and Midtjylland of Denmark, a side who are owned by the same majority shareholder as Brentford are. So, there'll be plenty to be said and written about them and the approach they take. They have a very close linkage, you'd imagine, therefore, with Brentford, who, of course, have Thomas Frank as their manager and a lot of Danish players going across to southwest London as part of all of that. So, Matt, I'll come to you first on Liverpool's draw being completed. Midtjylland joining Atalanta and Ajax. Probably gone as well as Jurgen Klopp could have hoped for.
Yeah, I think so. Again, none of those trips that are particularly too far away. I think definitely Liverpool should be comfortably progressing from that group. I mean, we did say that. I think what was it, the first year that they got back into the Champions League? You sort of looked at that and thought it was a decent group to get out of, and it took them a little bit of time. But Liverpool have progressed a long way since then. So yeah, Liverpool, Ajax, Atalanta, Midtjylland. You'd imagine there'd be some, pretty decent games for the neutral in there, as far as I'm aware. Not that I've watched Midtjylland too many times, but I believe they play a pretty decent brand of football. I think they played Manchester United, didn't they, a couple of seasons ago, possibly in the Europa League, and sort of caused them a few problems. So they'll be an interesting side. Obviously, the link with Brentford and that sort of thing is interesting as well. But yeah, Ajax and Atalanta, not a bad draw, I don't think. I'm sure Jurgen Klopp will be pretty happy with that.
No, and Dan Morgan, we saw obviously last year with Salzburg coming into Liverpool's group, it offered somewhat of an extra opportunity for Liverpool to scout Takumi Minamino and bring him to the club. Midtjylland are a club who sort of similarly work in that sort of Moneyball type approach, and Atalanta playing nice fanciful football, and Ajax, a team who bring up footballers the right way. It might also work out as a nice little scouting group for Liverpool as well, this one.
You never know, do you? It's I think Minamino was probably someone Liverpool had an eye on for a while. We know how they work in terms of data and stuff. So whether they've got a player in one of those sides that they're already looking at and can get a better look at, a better gauge on, you don't know. But certainly, I don't know too much about Midtjylland, but obviously Atalanta and Ajax, certainly sides who are sort of built on sort of youth and exuberance and players with potential and possibly sell-on value. So you wonder whether there is a possibility there for Liverpool. I don't think they've got the same relationship as they did with someone like Salzburg. They were able to sort of tap into that buyout clause for Takumi Minamino. But yeah, all stands to be an exciting group. Am I right in thinking this is their first time in the Champions League, the Danish club? Okay, well, yeah, really, really exciting time for Liverpool. Really sort of exciting draw. And yeah, you'd expect Liverpool to come out on top. I think, like I said before, I think the group will very quickly emerge with a pattern of Liverpool and then sort of two from Ajax and Atalanta fighting for second spot.
Yeah, you do certainly feel as though that will be the case. Dan, one of the things that's always mentioned regarding the Champions League, that it's the same teams year in, year out that face one another. And two of the three opponents for Liverpool in the group stage sides they've never faced in Europe before. And obviously, Ajax, the team that you wanted, having obviously avoided each other for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember having a couple of kind of wry conversation with friends before, when it seemed, for a while, it seemed like Liverpool were always getting Porto and Marseille and the usual suspects almost every season, which certainly from a travelling and kind of adventure point of view, sometimes left you wanting a little bit more. But, as we've mentioned a number of times, this is a very unusual Champions League group stage. And I think, Liverpool will look at that and think really they've done as well as they could have hoped for. There's no real long distance travelling. all the teams will of course have due diligence done on them by the scouting staff, and Liverpool will go into every match as prepared as they can be. Obviously, the next thing we're waiting for, you'd imagine this will be within the next 3 or 4 hours this evening. We'll know the dates and the group fixtures, and then I think that's when you can really look at things, when you see how the 6 matches will be interspersed in amongst the Premier League games. That's when I think you can really start to kind of plot a way through it and kind of try and look at it in a wider context. But yeah, I think overall Jurgen Klopp and his men will be pretty satisfied with that, and hopefully it's whetted their appetite to get back on the European trail and hopefully bring number 7 back to Anfield and get back above Bayern Munich again.
Yeah, I hope that will be the case for Liverpool. So we'll round up the draw in full before we go. But Liverpool, just to round that one off again, Liverpool, Ajax, Atalanta and Midtjylland in Group D in the Champions League for the group phase. If you do want to keep sending in your reaction, whether it be YouTube or Facebook, we'll try and get some of those on the screen before we do go. But looking through the rest of the group then, Matt, Group A, Bayern, Atletico Salzburg and Lokomotiv Moscow. Looks as though it's probably there for the top 2 seeds to take that group.
Yeah, you'd certainly think so. I think Salzburg will cause them a few problems. Obviously, we saw that with Liverpool last season. Very good team, but they have lost, obviously, Erling Haaland and Minamino and a couple of others. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they get on. Obviously, they've had that experience of last season. Should be some entertaining games there, I think. But yeah, certainly you would expect Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid to go through without any major, massive problems. Certainly Bayern and probably Atletico Madrid as well. And yeah, you've got to sort of feel a bit for Moscow there. I think they're going to be right up against it to get through.
Yeah, Group B then, teams we got in there, Dan K, Real Madrid, Shakhtar Donetsk, Inter Milan and Borussia Mönchengladbach.
That's a really interesting group. I think Inter Milan were definitely the ones to avoid in pot C. As pot D, I think Mönchengladbach were the last team out, and I would quite have liked them to be in Liverpool's group. Probably a harder game than Midtjylland, but obviously you've got the whole romance around Liverpool Mönchengladbach, who Liverpool won their first UEFA Cup against in '73 and their first European Cup in '77. I think I'm right in saying I don't think the clubs have played since the '78 semi-final, which Liverpool won on the way to beating Bruges at Wembley. The other aspect to it as well, I think since that 77 game, there are quite strong ties between the two fans. I think there's a group of Liverpool fans that go over to Mönchengladbach and vice versa every year. So that would have been another nice element to it as well. But who knows? But they had obviously a good season in the Bundesliga. That's why they're in the Champions League. And who knows? Maybe that they might. Yeah, obviously you have to think Real Madrid and Inter Milan very much be the favourites to get through that group. But by the same token, every team is going to have this compressed fixture list with Champions League and domestic league games cheek by jowl, and you may actually and who knows, we might actually see maybe more shocks in the group stage than this year than we would in most seasons because of that. So interesting group that, and it's sort of it all depends what match days games fall on as to whether you're able to watch the matches, obviously, if they clash with Liverpool. But I would hope that Group C, is it Group C we're looking at? Sorry, Group B is on a different day to Group D, because I think the matches in that group will probably be quite watchable.
Yeah, Dan Morgan, any groups there that are taking your fancy in particular?
The obvious one, I think, is a Group B, the group of death that we sort of talked about throughout. Yeah, I think obviously you've got Juventus in there, who I still rate as a good side. I still think they're a strong outfit. I still think they can sort of Italy themselves into a semi-final stage at the best of times, and then Barcelona. I'd just be interested from that group to see those ties, to be honest, the head-to-heads, and which is how I kind of look at it. So fascinated by Manchester United's group, because I do really think it's really open in terms of 2 from 3, basically, with Leipzig, United, and PSG. I think it's anyone's in terms of sort of which 2 from 3 you put in there. And then you got no real shocks anywhere. It's similar to sort of Group G. I'm I'm intrigued to see sort of Bayern versus Atletico as a contest, and even though I expect both of them to go through, I think they'll still be really good games. So it's more sort of individual games I'm looking at now, and then sort of having an eye on who Liverpool could face in the last 16.
Yeah, well, we will, of course, have to wait and see for the draw for that one and how that one does play out. But still going to have a bit of time to wait, of course, until the Champions League does, in fact, the group stage, in fact, does get underway. But Matt, your take on the other groups apart from Liverpool's?
Yeah, there's some interesting ones, isn't there? I think, obviously, Manchester City's group is fairly favourable for them. I think you could say definitely the same about Chelsea as well. So I suppose from a Liverpool perspective, you might have wanted both of those teams to have a little bit more of a challenge, but certainly Manchester United, not that I imagine that they will be up there fighting for a Premier League title with Liverpool, but you look at that and Paris Saint-Germain and RB Leipzig, I think both of those teams can cause them a huge amount of problems, and Martin Skrtel as well going up against Manchester United, one for Liverpool fans to watch out for. So yeah, plenty of interesting ones. I would look at Borussia Dortmund's group as well. I think that could be quite entertaining. Obviously, Lazio are a team that have impressed over the last couple of seasons in with them. Club Brugge as well, and Zenit with previous Liverpool connections. Obviously, Bruges historically, but also Mignolet's club and Zenit as well with Dan Lovren. So yeah, plenty of interest all across those groups. I think there's plenty of decent ones, but as I say, certainly Manchester City and Chelsea, I think, can be quite happy, probably even more so than Liverpool, to be honest, with the groups that they've got.
Yeah, and Dan K, before we go, just talking of the format for this year for the Champions League, we're going to have effectively 6 consecutive game weeks. Of course, we do have November's international break that will be sort of disrupting that flow. But from the 20th of October, the group stage gets underway. It all concludes on the 9th of December. So these games are really going to bounce one off the other. And I suppose that's really when we're going to see the whole fixture scheduling thing really kick off. And Liverpool, of course, avoiding any massive trips.
Well, absolutely, and we should know by the time we all go to bed tonight how those match dates will look, and how the league games will kind of fit in amongst them. I mean, obviously we're very early on into the season, and we know enough about this Liverpool side to know that they don't take anything for granted at all these days. But Liverpool have won 3 out of 3 with 2.5, 3 fairly tough fixtures with Chelsea and Arsenal already beaten. So it is really just a case of now seeing which way the cookie crumbles. It's no, at the end of the day, it's no surprise. Everybody knew even before the Premier League season started, let alone today's draw, that this was going to be the nature of it. And even if it poses some extra challenges for the management, for the squad's fitness people, for the nutrition people, for all those who have to work out the logistics of how things are going to work. These are problems that you want to have. It's not so very long ago that Liverpool either were in the Europa League or weren't even in Europe at all. So as I said before, the fact that we all remember Jurgen Klopp's first full season, just getting back into the Champions League was the absolute priority, and it was only achieved with that final day victory over Middlesbrough at Anfield. The fact that now Liverpool do feel like a permanent fixture in the Champions League again is something to be celebrated, and these are nice problems to have, which the vast majority of the other clubs in the Premier League would give their eye teeth to. So yeah, bring it all on. Really looking forward to it all getting started.
Well, that is it from us here on the Blood Red channel, then bringing you the Champions League group stage draw. Liverpool, of course, drawing Ajax, Atalanta and Midtjylland, as you can see on screen now. For more reaction, head over to the Liverpool Echo website. The live blog's going on there. As and when we know how the fixtures fall, you'll get reaction across there. Liverpool.com will also have plenty of writing on there as well. But for myself, Guy Clarke, Dan Kay, Dan Morgan and Matt Addison, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your time and your company here on Blood Red. It's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.